He checked the oil on a Tuesday. The dipstick came back dry. He had owned the car 8 days. He wiped it, reinserted it, pulled it again. Still dry. His hands were clean. The engine was new. The badge on the hood was one of the most trusted in the world. He topped it off and drove home. A week later it was dry again. Something inside the engine was drinking it alive, and nobody would tell him what. Go back a little. The car was supposed to be a triumph. For years, the world's best engineers had chased the same dream: power without weight, silence without weakness, a machine that felt like a whisper and pulled like a storm. The company had built its name on that promise: precision, discipline, the sense that every part was placed by someone who cared. Their new engine was the crown of it, smaller than the old one, lighter, yet stronger in every measure that mattered. The engineers had done something clever, something no one else had dared. They took the two halves of the engine and folded the machinery inward. They tucked the hardest working parts into the tightest space they could find. On paper, it was elegant, it saved room, it saved weight. It looked, in the diagrams, almost beautiful. The men who signed it off were proud. They had reason to be. Early tests sang. The car reviewers swooned. The engine felt alive, in a way its rivals never had. The owners paid a fortune for it. They believed they were buying the finest engineering on earth. They were buying a countdown. The service departments noticed it first. Cars kept coming back. Not old cars, new ones. The complaint was always the same: the oil was disappearing. At first, the dealers had an answer ready. This engine simply liked to drink. It was normal. It was a feature of a high performance. Add more oil and enjoy the power. The owners frowned, but they trusted the badge. Then the frowns deepened. Because it wasn't a little oil, it was a lot. Some drivers were adding oil between fill-ups. Some kept a bottle in the trunk like medicine. A man would fill his tank and top up his engine in the same visit. The dealers kept smiling. Normal, they said. Perfectly normal. But somewhere inside the company, the technicians knew better. The parts they pulled from these engines told a story the brochures did not. Seals hardened before their time, surfaces glazed and scorched, metal that had aged years in a matter of months. These engines were not drinking oil, they were cooking it. Someone wrote it down, someone flagged it. Internal notes moved up the chain, quiet and careful, the way bad news always travels inside a proud company. And at every level, the same decision was made: say nothing, because the fix was not a bottle of oil. The fix lived deep inside the design itself, the clever, elegant, award-winning design. To admit the flaw was to admit the whole idea was wrong, so they buried it under a friendly word. They called it consumption. They called it character. They printed it in the manual so no claim could ever stick. The owners kept adding oil, the engineers kept quiet, and the countdown kept running. They buried this file for years. Subscribe, because there are more. It usually happened without warning: a morning commute, a merge onto the highway, an ordinary right foot on an ordinary pedal, then a sound, not a bang, worse than a bang, a rattle, deep in the metal, like a coin loose in a tin. The driver's stomach dropped before his mind caught up. The dashboard lit amber, then red. He eased off. He coasted to the shoulder. He sat there in the ticking silence, hands still on the wheel. Under the hood, something had finally let go. For months, the heat had been working. Patient, invisible. Wearing down the seals meant to hold the engine together. Oil that should have stayed in its channels had begun to seep where it must never go. Into the fire, into the chambers. Little by little, the engine had been consuming itself from the inside, and now, on a nothing morning, on a nothing stretch of road, the math ran out. The tow truck came. The estimate arrived a week later. For many owners, the number was more than the car was worth. They had done nothing wrong. They had changed the oil. They had trusted the badge, and the badge had known all along. The truth was sitting in a design nobody wanted to reopen. Here is what they had done. The engine was a V8. 2 banks of cylinders, angled apart, meeting in a valley down the middle. In every normal engine, that valley stays cool. It breathes. The hot parts sit on the outside, in the open air. But the engineers wanted their engine small, so they turned the whole idea inside out. They took the turbochargers, the hottest components in the entire machine, and they placed them in that valley, right in the center, right on top of everything. They called it the Hot V. It was brilliant for packaging. It was a disaster for heat, because now the fiercest temperatures in the engine were trapped in the one place with nowhere to escape. That heat soaked downward, into the seals, into the oil galleries, into the delicate rubber rings meant to keep lubricant on one side and fire on the other. Rubber hates heat. It hardens, it cracks, it shrinks. Once those seals failed, oil crept past them and burned. That was the disappearing oil, that was the rattle, that was the countdown written into the geometry of the engine before a single one was ever sold. The flaw wasn't a bad part, the flaw was the shape itself. When the lawsuits came, the company reached for the old defense. Normal consumption, written in the manual, nobody's fault. But the internal notes existed. The engineers had seen it. The warnings had climbed the chain and died there. That was the part no courtroom could forgive. Not the heat, not the seals, not even the ruined engines. The failure was that someone had known and chosen the brochure over the truth. In the end, the company agreed to pay. The settlement ran past 200 million. Extended warranties, reimbursed repairs, quiet money to make a loud problem disappear. The engine was revised, new seals, better cooling, a design patch to survive its own ambition. But the first owners never got their trust back. They had bought the finest engineering on earth. What they got was a secret, idling under the hood, waiting for a Tuesday. Years earlier, another car maker hit a different flaw. And this one didn't burn oil. It cheated the very machines built to catch it.